In 1997, a Japanese company called Square released one of the most influential role-playing games of all time, Final Fantasy VII. It smashed sales records on a global scale, becoming the poster child for the original PlayStation in the process. And one of the main driving forces behind this, beyond its compelling turn-based gameplay loop and customization options, was the narrative. Everything would start off rather simple. You took on the role of Cloud Strife, a mercenary contracted by a small eco-terrorist group called Avalanche. They planned to undertake a sabotage mission against an evil mega-corporation known as Shinra, who they believed was sucking the life out of the planet. The stakes were high in a relative sense, but as the plot developed, players would start to understand that there were much bigger issues faced by the planet, and they would all revolve around an individual known as Sephiroth. This name was first teased during a flashback sequence soon after the initial bombing mission was complete, with a young Cloud informing his childhood friend, Tifa Lockhart, that he wanted to leave their village and join Soldier, Shinra's elite paramilitary corps, so that he could emulate his hero, the great Sephiroth. As the story progressed, there would be many other similar mentions so as to build up anticipation. President Shinra, for example, would mention Sephiroth's name as a way of degrading Cloud when they came face to face inside Maka Reactor No. 5. And moments prior, Sephiroth would be the subject of another of Cloud's flashbacks, this time serving as a foreboding message that perhaps Sephiroth's greatness was not all that serene or altruistic. This notion was then confirmed towards the end of the Midgar sequence. While Sephiroth himself was nowhere to be found, his infamous sword certainly was, and was protruding from the back of President Shinra. From this point forward, more and more narrative devices were introduced so as to provide a progressive benchmark for Sephiroth's strength. The player was led to believe, for example, that the Midgar Zolom, an enemy that was capable of defeating the majority of even well-prepared and experienced players, was slain by Sephiroth with relative ease. Even more, the planet itself would eventually take a stand, activating autonomous creatures known as weapons due to the severe threat that Sephiroth posed to the very fabric of its existence. That threat would be codified within the lore, as Sephiroth used the black materia to summon Meteor. His objective was simple: destroy all living entities so as to commandeer the will of the planet and become a god. That Sephiroth would even be able to attempt such a feat highlighted his power within this aspect of the lore. But as the compilation of Final Fantasy VII came into existence, and more focus was placed around Sephiroth, we would start to understand so much more about the true power Sephiroth wielded, and how he would stack up against the various other characters that have been introduced. But to ensure everything has true context, we need to embark on a deep exploration of the lore surrounding Sephiroth. Sephiroth was supposedly born around 20 to 30 years prior to the main events of Final Fantasy VII, but his birth was far from conventional. Thousands of years before the main story began, an extraterrestrial being of incredible strength called Genova landed on the planet via a meteor. The arrival of Genova caused significant disruption for the local inhabitants, known as the Cetra. Not only had the meteor itself left a huge, visible scar on the surface of the planet, but all the nearby flora and fauna were eradicated. Genova had also attempted to assert itself, but as the Cetra were powerful beings in their own right, due to their attunement with the planet, what commenced was a brutal and bloody affair. As their numbers started to dwindle, the Cetra became ever desperate. In response, the planet, now realizing that Genova represented a major threat to its continued existence, created weapons. Acting as enormous creatures of incredible power, weapons would have been the last line of defense for the planet. But before they could be activated, the few Cetra that remained, out of sheer desperation, managed to muster up the strength to seal Genova inside the crater from which it had emerged. For 2,000 years, Genova remained sealed. But as the Shinra Electric Power Company sought to strengthen their iron grip on the planet, they were always on the hunt for new technology and new sources of power. From ancient texts, their scientists had learnt about something called the Promised Land, and as they attempted to widen their net in search of knowledge, the decision was taken to excavate the northern crater. There, the research teams found numerous things of interest, but the one thing that caught their eye above all else was the frozen remains of Genova. With their limited information, the scientists concluded that the remains must have been of Cetran origins, and that if they were true, considering the Cetra were believed to be extinct, it could help them to unlock the secrets of the Promised Land. What followed became known as the Genova Project, and the primary objective was to create a human-Cetra hybrid. The new wave of research had two focal points: Project G, which was helmed by Dr. Hollander, and Project S, which was helmed by Professor Hojo. Project G, also known as Project Gillian, focused around Gillian Hewley. As a willing participant, Gillian was injected with Genova cells and then impregnated. This method created Angeal Hewley, a strong individual who gained the ability to produce copies of himself and to transfer abilities between donors and host. It also spawned G-type soldiers, who were created after being injected with Gillian's cells, and the most notable example of this was Genesis Rhapsodus. Project S, also known as Project Sephiroth, focused more on the fetus. Hojo and Lucrezia Crescent theorized that they would have better results if they were more direct. And so, after it became known that Lucrezia was pregnant with Hojo's child, they both decided to inject Genova cells straight into the fetus while it was still in the womb. Their experiment was a success. Sephiroth was born with enhanced abilities in a multitude of areas, and didn't display the same deficiencies as either Angeal or Genesis. From the moment Sephiroth was born, Hojo treated his own son as a science experiment, and to ensure optimum efficiency, Lucrezia was barred from ever interacting with him. This placed a strain on the young boy, as he grew up in a clinical and unorthodox environment. But it did little to contain his obvious talents that were being coaxed out of him by an ever-enthusiastic Hojo. Realizing the potential housed within Sephiroth, Shinra, as a corporation, decided to exploit what they considered to be an asset that they owned. Before Sephiroth had even taken part in actual combat, this led to them using his name and likeness in propaganda campaigns. It wouldn't be until Sephiroth was in his early teens that he would be let loose in an active combat situation and show signs of the power that made others within the organization dub him as the Golden Child. Sephiroth, jumping from a helicopter to provide assistance to Glenn, Matt, and Lucia, not only showed incredible precision by slicing straight through a rocket, but was also able to split one of the enemy Redoran vehicles in half and then eradicate the oncoming reinforcements using a powerful fire elemental spell. After this mission, Sephiroth began to become the very embodiment of what Shinra had claimed he was. And due to his later exploits during the Wutai War, Sephiroth established himself as a soldier first class, and not only earned the respect of his peers, but also the nickname, the Silver Soldier. During this time, Sephiroth became close with Angeal and Genesis. Each had no clue they were all born as a result of the Genova Project. But it was clear that all three of them possessed skills that were unparalleled within the soldier program. The trio would often spar as a way of staying sharp and improving. But even though they were each miles above their contemporaries, it was also clear that Sephiroth was more skillful and powerful than both Angeal and Genesis. Whereas Angeal was happy to accept this, Genesis was not. He had become envious of Sephiroth's fame, and these emotions would eventually boil over during a virtual reality training exercise. Genesis challenged Sephiroth to a one-on-one duel, and after a brief exchange between the two, Angeal was forced to step in and stop the fight. But whereas Genesis left the combat simulator with a significant wound, having been humbled, Sephiroth had not even broken a sweat. This incident further asserted Sephiroth's dominant position, but his skills would be pushed to the extreme less than 1 year later as he was forced to lock horns with another of Hojo's creations. Having been caught up in the Calm incident, a girl called Felicia was captured by Hojo's lab technicians for the purpose of experimentation. Felicia just so happened to be the daughter of Verdo, the leader of the Turks, but Hojo could not have cared less and decided to experiment with materia splicing regardless. For her troubles, Felicia had the powerful Zirconade materia inserted into the back of her hand, but after having not received the required output from his experimentations on her, Hojo decided to discard Felicia as a failed experiment. Felicia suffered from amnesia, and eventually made her way to Cosmo Canyon, where she was taken in by Fajito, embedded into Avalanche, and granted the new name of Elfei. It wouldn't take long for the result of Hojo's experimentations to become obvious for everyone to see. Elfei possessed incredible power, and was able to take out 100 men with relative ease. This strength saw Elfay appointed as the leader of Avalanche, with Vahito serving as intelligence commander, but in reality, she was being manipulated the whole time by her subordinate. When Avalanche would later invade Junon, President Shinra decided to leave nothing to chance. Sephiroth was dispatched to handle this nuisance once and for all. But despite all of Sephiroth's strengths, and even with the opportunity to land his strongest attack, Elfay proved to be every bit his equal. With neither combatant conceding defeat, the conflict only came to a conclusion once Elfay, as the leader of Avalanche, decided to withdraw so as to save the lives of her troops. This encounter would have a profound impact on Sephiroth, as in the parley that happened as Elfay withdrew, she questioned why Sephiroth actually fought for Shinra. Sometime later, Sephiroth was sent on a mission to Nibelheim. It was here that pieces of the puzzle that related to his past would be connected, and after learning the truth, Sephiroth entered into a fit of rage. In his wake, Nibelheim was destroyed, and many of its citizens were either wounded or killed. Zack Fair attempted to stop Sephiroth, but he was no match for his Soldier First class contemporary. However, in the aftermath, Sephiroth would be defeated. Believing there was no one else around who could stop him, following his successful sparring session with Zack, Sephiroth became complacent. He was distracted by thoughts of the future and being reunited with his mother, and it afforded a young Shinra infantryman called Cloud the opportunity to stab him in the back. In the aftermath, Sephiroth attempted to retaliate, but in his weakened state, he was overwhelmed by Cloud's strength and resolve and thrown into the depths of the Mount Nibel Macro reactor. It was this sequence of events that led to the true manifestation of Sephiroth being formed, and this manifestation was far stronger than the Sephiroth of before. Fueled further by anger and rage, Sephiroth refused to be absorbed into the livestream, and instead started to learn from it. Using both Genova's severed head and his own sheer will, Sephiroth began to create a new body and hatched a plan to become all-powerful. As an indication of this newfound strength, even though Sephiroth did not have a complete physical form, he was still able to assert his will over not just anyone who had been injected with Genova cells, including Cloud, but even the likes of Genova itself. In order to enact his master plan, however, Sephiroth still needed to obtain the Black Materia. Designated as one of the two ultimate materia, the Black Materia is one of the oldest known to exist, and it had been sealed away long ago due to its destructive power. It's said that due to the power of the memories contained within, not just anyone was capable of using the Black Materia. Its might could only be wielded by someone who possessed incredible spiritual power, a power Sephiroth hoped to obtain by reuniting all of the Genova remnants. This in itself showed that Sephiroth's true strength was beyond much of what was comprehensible, as he was able to successfully use the Black Materia to summon Meteor and bring about destruction on a planetary scale. He would, however, end up being defeated, again, by Cloud and his allies. But this was not for any lack of ability. Instead, once again, it was down to him being distracted. While the encounter was taking place, Sephiroth was attempting to summon Meteor, as well as attempting to block the summoning of Holy, and ultimately, this was his undoing, as although Sephiroth was incredibly strong, he was unable to split his attention 3 ways and still end up as the victor. Even though Sephiroth was defeated for a second time, he again managed to resist being absorbed into the livestream, as his burning hatred for Cloud was enough to allow him to remain separate from the other spirits. This then afforded him a chance of revenge. He would taint the livestream so much that he would be able to control its will, and upon doing so, he believed that he would be able to use the planet as a vessel to travel through space and find another planet to rule. When the livestream had emerged to assist Holy in defending the planet against Meteor, it spread across the land. Sephiroth seized this opportunity to spread out his own memories and Genova's remaining consciousness. This action created a disease known as geostigma, and it infected young children and individuals like Cloud who had weak immune systems. At the same time, Sephiroth attempted to create another avatar for himself, as he had done so before. But due to his own memory now being so fragmented, this action was not possible. Sephiroth therefore searched the livestream for other memories and used them to craft 3 remnants, called Kadaj, Yazoo, and Loz, who would serve as a physical manifestation of Sephiroth's will. Those remnants were then tasked with hunting down the remains of Genova, something that Sephiroth believed would allow him to become reborn again. This belief turned out to be true, as after Kadaj absorbed the reclaimed Genova cells, Sephiroth did return. Cloud was again ready to stand toe-to-toe with his arch-nemesis, but this time, Sephiroth was not distracted. The ensuing fight was uncomfortably one-sided to begin with. The power and skill advantage was clear, as Sephiroth toyed with Cloud and didn't even break a sweat. He wanted to elongate and enjoy the fight as long as possible so as to make Cloud suffer, and he goaded him relentlessly. This arrogant strategy eventually backfired though, as Cloud would end up being imbued and emboldened by the memories of his friends, and he would use this to gain a second wind, mustering the strength to defeat the overconfident Sephiroth. This represented the only instance where Cloud had defeated Sephiroth without some kind of caveat, such as Sephiroth either being distracted or Cloud needing to rely on the assistance of his friends. As such, it would therefore suggest that either the power of Sephiroth was not as extreme as envisioned, or that Cloud had ascended to a new level. But that's before you delve into the lore. According to Kazushige Nojima, Sephiroth had not intended to return in this manner. Working along with the reunion theory, the plan had been for Sephiroth to merge with each of the remnants and Genova when the time was right. This plan was altered after Loz and Yazoo were defeated, and with Kadaj as the last remaining remnant, he acted out of desperation when facing the same fate. This then forced another action to be taken, and it was Genova's will that brought about the return of Sephiroth, not Sephiroth himself. Based on this, it could be deduced that the return of Sephiroth was premature, and he was therefore not at maximum strength, resulting in his ultimate defeat at the hands of Cloud in one-on-one combat. But irrespective of all of that, the power of Sephiroth is quite clear. There are some, such as Elfir and Cloud, who could rival and even surpass Sephiroth in certain instances, but neither had the capacity to reap anywhere near the same level of destruction as Sephiroth when he was focused on a task at hand and complete in mind and body. But with that, we hoped you enjoyed this discussion around the strength of Sephiroth. Be sure to let us know in the comments what you thought about this video concept and whether you'd like us to tackle another character in the future. And if you did enjoy the video, to give us a like and subscribe for more content. Alright everyone, with that, this is Daryl signing out. As always, I'd like to give a big thank you to all of our Patreon and YouTube membership supporters, especially Benjamin Snow, The Livestream, Gregory, Justin Dent and Zook and TDK, who are super special Onion Knight supporters, and of course, a big thank you to everyone for watching this video. I'll see you all again soon for more Final Fantasy goodness.